I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. I'm learning and dreaming with Microsoft Teams. The hub and the teamwork of Microsoft 365 in these quarantine times. I'm Microsoft teaming with Microsoft Teams. Yeah, with Microsoft Teams.
Welcome to the latest episode of Inside Microsoft Teams. I'm your host, Stephen Rosen. Thanks for joining us today. At the previous Ignite that we just had a few weeks ago, we got a ton of great questions on all of the new security features that we had announced. So I got very excited and said, we should do a show on this because there's so many great questions. So I have asked my good friend John Grushek to join us today, and we have a guest co-host. So let's jump into the day. So first of all, I'm going to introduce my guest co-host. We're going to have a different guest co-host on every episode for the rest of the season. And this week, it is MVP Christina Wheeler. Hi, Christina. How are you?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Take a moment. Tell us about yourself, because for the folks who don't know you.
Fantastic. So thanks for having me, Stephen. I'm glad to be on the show today. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Christina Wheeler. I'm a principal solution architect at Canvas Consulting. They're based out of Kirkland, Washington. I work here in the South in Middle Georgia. I'm in Bon Air, Georgia, below Macon. So I don't have to shovel snow anymore. I specialize in everything Office, SharePoint, Microsoft 365. And I'm excited about today's show.
And you are, I'm assuming, close to a Waffle House, which is my favorite place to go get breakfast when I go down to that part of the country.
They are all over the place here.
Between that and Cracker Barrels, it's actually good that they're far away, because I would weigh a lot more than I do if I could more easily get to a Cracker Barrel and to a Waffle House on a regular basis. So it's a good thing. John, how are you?
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Good. Are you recovered from Ignite?
I am, and I'm thinking about Waffle House.
How can you not think about Waffle House? Well, where I grew up and where John grew up, there were no Waffle Houses because we both grew up in the Chicagoland area. So, John, I have 3 quick rapid-fire questions for you before we jump into who you are and all the rest of the good stuff. Lou's, Geno's, or Giordano's?
Oh, I have to go with actually Pequod's, which is kind of an under the I love that pan style. So I think it's if you're ever in Chicago, it's the best za to get.
All right. Are you when it comes to popcorn, cheese, or caramel? This is a trick question.
It's got to be the Chicago mix. All three.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to. You would take the cheese and the caramel, and you have to get it from Garrett's, which is the best one out there. The caramel's not sticky, it's buttery. The cheese doesn't really come off in your hands, and it's amazing. And I would ask you if you're Cubs or Sox, but I can see the Wrigley Field picture behind you, but I'm going to ask you anyways.
I support all Chicago teams. We just want to win, but yeah, it's a nice little Cubs one, and that was actually a Pearl Jam concert at Wrigley, so an extra little treat there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. To kind of give a wrapper to today's show, we really want to talk about how we can protect and govern our information that is generated through services like Teams and on the back end, SharePoint Online and OneDrive, and how we can better support external collaboration without having as many security risks. And one of the biggest areas that I constantly get asked questions on is external guests versus guest access, and what do we use? And we made it even more interesting by announcing a new feature called Teams Connect. So what is Teams Connect? How is it different from the current ways that we're doing things, and how should folks look at this? So I'll let you just walk us through what Teams Connect is.
Yeah, awesome question, Stephen. And again, the benefit of Teams Connect and shared channels is that we're able to add outside members into that shared channel, and they only have access to those collab resources in that shared channel. So it really breaks that boundary down to have easy collaboration if you're just looking to work in a single channel.
So what do you need to have to set this up? Do you have to have Azure AD as well? Because this sounds more like what the way that folks were using Yammer was to set up Yammer so you could bring a bunch of external folks and be able to have conversations. It's within a channel, but they couldn't see any of the information within the channel. Now we're sort of extending that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I pull up a quick image here of when you go through and actually create a shared channel, you'll see this drop down, and what it allows you to do is specify that shared channel versus public or private, where you can bring those guests in. And then the great part is when you do set up a shared channel, you'll see in this UI in your Teams, again, you're in that same Teams client. And that's the benefit of Teams Connect and shared channels is, Stephen, if you and I are working outside the org with a vendor through guest access, we're switching tenants or switching organizations through
Right.
Teams. Shared channels, you don't have to do this. You see this nice little UI right here that lets you know, hey, this is a shared channel. And again, we're from an organizational boundary perspective from IT, those shared channel members don't have access to the rest of the org like you do with guest access. They're limited to that single channel.
Got it. So what do they need to set this up? Is it AAD like it is for external and guest access, or is there different requirements for setting this up?
Yeah, great question, Stephen. It's going to be set up through your same Microsoft Teams admin center. And again, everything kind of runs through Azure AD and identity, but this is not Azure B2B. So it's not quite that in-depth guest access where you have to go and manage all those guest users.
Got it. Christine, is this going to make it easier for the people that you're working with when it comes to setting this up, or is this going to create a new level of potential confusion?
Oh, no. This is huge. One of my biggest complaints and customer complaints is the fact that you have to currently change orgs, that the whole guest access stuff. The other thing I have a lot of customers that are nervous about security. So they shut off the, external guest access and so they're locking themselves down. They're crippling themselves. So I think this is going to open up a couple of things. One, allow those that are, terrified of their data, which I get, to open it up, to allow this. And
Right.
For me, changing orgs, it's been a complaint from customers and myself for a long time.
Yeah. And now at least we've made tenant switching faster, which is great. And that's certainly making it a lot easier. I saw it on mobile this week and I was like, wow, I can go back and forth within these now in like a second rather than having to wait several, almost minutes to go back and forth. But yeah, I think this is going to really help a lot of folks that have had some confusion on that. And I think, Christina, when folks say, should I make them a guest or external guest, how have you approached that and having that conversation with customers? Because I think there's still a lot of confusion there.
There is a lot of confusion. And that's why what I'm seeing is even when I'm educating, organizations, they still get confused because they paranoia kicks in, right? Or they might have some level of understanding and then you have someone else in the business come in and go, no, we can't do this because they don't understand. And so the biggest thing was organizations. I have some where they might say, okay, we're going to allow us to communicate. And then all of a sudden they shut it off. And then what I'm seeing some customers do is they actually create an internal AD account for vendors like myself because they feel that's the only way to be secure.
Sure. Yeah.
So then once again, then I have multiple tenant accounts that I have to log into instead of just being able to interact with them, with my VDash or my Canvas account.
Right. No, that makes sense. Awesome. All right. Well, good. I'm excited. And then, John, when are folks going to be able to start playing with this and getting access to it?
Yeah, great question, Stephen. We just rolled it out into a private preview. So you're looking at hopefully within the first half of this year and the next coming months, we'll open it up to a little bit more of a public preview program so everyone can start playing with it and testing it out.
All right.
Awesome.
The goal for folks and the goal of IT is to ensure that users can, especially with hybrid and remote work from anywhere, work on any device, and be able to do it securely, which is something that is relatively new for many companies. They have been, here's your laptop, here's where you use it. You got to dial in, you got a VPN. God, hopefully you don't have one of those tokens. You got to wait 60 seconds and type in the number and all of that. The goal is I should be able to sit at my laptop, grab my Mac, grab my iPad, grab my Android phone, go to Starbucks and pick up exactly where I left off. But the concern about doing that for a lot of folks is the data. And we made a bunch of announcements. One of my personal favorites is that we've extended DLP out now to Teams and sensitivity labels and information barriers. So let's start with DLP. So data loss protection, which is something that folks, if they've been managing Exchange, if they've been managing SharePoint or OneDrive, they're familiar with. So, John, we've now extended this out to Teams. What does that mean for folks, and how easy is it for them to be able to turn that functionality on?
Yeah, absolutely, Stephen. Great question, and I'll go ahead and ask a quick one back to you. Can I show off a quick demo here?
Yeah, no, please, absolutely.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen here as I talk about it. But yes, DLP, the importance is kind of what you hit on there, Stephen, is this ability to extend across the organization, across all of our different collaboration spaces. to be able to look for that structured data, which DLP really looks for, right? Credit card numbers, passports, et cetera. So you'll see here in my sample tenant, I have a couple policies already created. You can see I have a terrible naming convention, which is a slap on the wrist right away. But you can see here, I'm going to take a look at this Contoso General PII policy. And I just want to show the ease of extending it across the org, because we can say, hey, this PII policy was initially rolled out for Exchange, for SharePoint, and for OneDrive. And as I go ahead and edit it, you'll see here quickly, we can switch it on for Teams chat and channel messages. And one thing I do want to call out very clearly is for chat and channel messages, you do need E5. Everything else for DLP is E3, including file protection. Since Teams is built off of SharePoint and OneDrive, you do get that. But specifically for those chat and channel messages, you do need to have an E5 SKU. And again, in this case, let's say we just rolled out Teams chat and channel messages DLP. We can also do that inclusion and exclusion for if we have certain user groups that are in scope or out of scope, and quickly apply those policies.
Okay. And while you're in the demo, let's talk about sensitivity labels.
Yes, absolutely. So let me go ahead and quickly close out of this one and hop over to sensitivity labels. And again, building off of that Microsoft 365 enterprise grade security and compliance, we are able to leverage things like sensitivity labels to classify our documents. And Stephen,
now this does not require E5, correct?
Correct. And this is the great part is, Stephen, you and I are used to essentially opening a document, and if there was something in there that Microsoft IT didn't like, we'd get a notification or an auto classification, which is E5, but we'd be familiar with that. And now we've extended it to Microsoft Teams. And so what you're able to do is create these labels, publish them to group sites, and then what you could do is get this experience right here, that when I go to create a new team, we're going to pull this up, create a team from scratch, and there you go. Sensitivity labels drop down. And one of the things that this also helps with, which I think Christina will have a great opinion on, is we can use these sensitivity labels to restrict guests from coming in or outside members. So again, we can kind of use it to lock down what that team will be like and enforce some security and guest access policies on it.
Perfect, John. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's going to be an exciting feature for folks to get a chance to start playing with. But this is a good point for us to take a quick break, so we'll be back in a minute to talk about information barriers, customer key, multi-geo, and also what Christina's seeing and what has been most impactful for her customers. So we'll be right back. This week for our tip and trick, we're going to take a look at the new Teams area on docs.microsoft.com. So here we are. I'm going to go to Documentation, scroll down here to Microsoft Teams, and we'll land at our new documentation page. We've broken it down to have it make more sense. The first thing you'll notice is that the IT Pro lifecycle is right here in front of you. Pilot, preparing for end user adoption, planning, deploy, secure, and manage. So let's take a closer look. Under Pilot, you'll see everything you need to do to prepare to start planning for Microsoft Teams. Everything from looking at chat teams and channels, to meeting and conferencing, to cloud voice. Moving to our next area is prepare for end user adoption, something that's important to think about before you deploy the product, and everything that you'll need to do that. Everything from planning your first team to empowering your champions, tools and downloads, getting started, and even thinking about governance at an early stage. Then, planning for enterprise deployment, thinking about how you're going to manage chat teams and channels, meeting and conferencing, and moving phone system and PSTN to Teams. Then we actually get into the deployment, taking a look at small business, enterprise, deploying the team client and team training, as well as quick starts, and upgrading from Skype and planning for hybrid connectivity. Under Secure, we dig deep into some different sessions online, some videos that will help you. We take a look at things like leveraging ATP, safe links, safe attachments, using SecureScore to take a look at your overall security posture, and dig deeper into compliance in our M365 Compliance Center. Finally, managing end users, the admin roles, Teams Admin Center, managing policies, how to monitor call quality, and how to enhance your overall service. If we scroll down a little further, we'll see things like learning for IT pros and admins. That takes us out to our Microsoft Learn area, our developer platform information, end user help and learning, Teams blogs and the tech community blogs, user voice, and where to go ahead and download Microsoft Teams. Finally,
You'll see our Chat and Teams channel broken down under key solutions, as well as things like extending team functionality with things like Visa and apps and bots, meeting and conferencing and setting up Microsoft Teams rooms, specific information for education in different industries like healthcare, frontline workers, and retail, voice calling, how to plan your Teams voice situation, setting up your phone system and Teams voice migration, and finally, government, where we take a look at GCC deployments, GCC High, and DoD. Overall, you'll find everything you need in the right order to really help speed up your planning, your piloting, your deploying, your managing, and securing of Microsoft Teams. We're excited to share this with you. This launched at Ignite, and we will continue to update the information on this in the future.
So my customers love Teams, but one of the questions I get asked the most is there a way I can prevent my users from being able to create a team, but have an automated process so that they can request a team? And my answer to this is yes. And now I'm going to show you how it works. So there is a request a team app template that you can deploy. This is available on GitHub. There's all these different app templates that Microsoft has released, and they're continuing to add more that you could download and deploy into your tenant. And what this provides the ability is an automated process, which is using the Power Platform to allow your people to request a team. So now I'm in my Teams team here, and this is my demo tenant. And I'm in the Teams development team. I just have this in the general channel right now. There's a tab here, Request a Team. When I click on Request a Team, what you see here is the ability for your users to go in and request building a team from scratch or using a template. So let's say I'll just go ahead and build one from scratch. I can decide if I want to request it to be private or public. And it's going to take you through this wizard process. The next thing I'm going to do is check to see if this is available. And what it's going to do is a flow kicks off in the back end to check to see if this team is available or not. And so I'm going to go ahead and update this name because I noticed it's not available. Check availability again. And now it's showing me that this team name is available. Then, of course, obviously you would put the description and the business reason of why you want this team to be created. Next thing you have to do is you have to at least set 2 owners. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself as one. And I'm going to go ahead and choose Tony Stark as the second one. And they don't have to add members in this request. They are required to do 2 owners. And then once the team is created, then they can go ahead and add additional members later. So now I'm going to click Next. Now I'm going to see the preview of my request, and then I can go ahead and submit it. So what it's telling me now is that this request has been submitted. And what's going to happen is there will be the submission will come through, and then there will be the approver that would go in and approve this team's request. So I have another Teams team here for the admins to approve the request. And what's going to happen here is that flow is going to kick off, and it might take a minute before it pops in here. But then what's going to happen is I'm going to see an adaptive card show up here for Flow to show me the request that has come in for the team. And then I can choose to approve or reject it. And then once it's approved or rejected, then the flow continues. And if I go in here, go to my flows, there's a team request approval flow, and then there is check team availability. So if I go on here, there's this approval process flow that goes through. And then once it's approved, there's also the Azure side of this, because there is a logic app that gets executed as well. So once the team gets approved to be created, there's this logic app that's going to run. And this is where it's going to do the automation of actually creating the team. Now, this is currently set to run every hour. Of course, you can change this to minute, second, and so on. Or I can decide to go ahead and run this. And when I run it, it's going to process through, and it's going to go through, depending upon if it was from scratch or a template, it will actually create that Teams team. And when that Teams team gets created, here's a couple different, I'm not going to run it because it's going to be the process in place. And it takes about 5.5 minutes once the logic app runs to create the Teams team. But once it's created, what will happen is the team will get created. There will be a message in the channel about the team creation. And then anybody that was part of the owners, as well as added as members, will get a notification, and it will show up in their Teams client. And so you can see here, it says the team was created by Request a Team app. And then there you go. And then if you reject the team, what will happen is a notification will get sent to the person that requested it, letting them know that it's been declined, and then the reason why. And that's how it works.
All right, Christina, before I get your thoughts on DLP and sensitivity labels, you've had a rough week. You got hit in the head with a drone. You're about to lose power. You are a trooper for being on the show, so I appreciate it. Are you gonna be okay to make it to the end today?
My UPS is on standby. We're good.
Okay, good. All right, thoughts on the new DLP feature that we finally extended that out, and sensitivity labels. Is this a game changer for a lot of customers as they look at ensuring that external users are securely working with data?
This is a game changer, especially for one of my big customers that I'm working on, an Office 365 migration. This is one that shut down external access and created an account for me. And so now they're open to things now, especially with sensitivity labels. Now, they were on an E3. They've been bumping up to E5 because they want to be able to do the auto tagging and everything else,
right,
with all those features. So this is definitely a game changer.
Yeah, and that's important. Again, I do want to say, because we got this question a lot at Ignite, that you do not need E5 to work with sensitivity labels unless you want to do exactly as Christina said, that auto tagging. Auto tagging does require the E5 SKUs, so keep that in mind. Cool. John, let's go back to you. Information barriers. We talked about that. Customer key, multi-geo. Take it. What did we announce? And why is it so important for all three of these? And also Azure Sentinel. That was another thing that we talked about this week. So take your pick.
I will do quickly kind of summarize, and then I actually have a demo of Sentinel, which I think some folks might want to see, so I can hop into that. But yeah, information barriers are a way to essentially block groups from being able to communicate. It sounds a little bit more scary than it is, but we know sometimes there are two different groups of or departments of an org that can't talk. Information barriers started in Teams, and we've now extended that to SharePoint and OneDrive. So again, doubling down on that extension across the ecosystem. Right. And then we have multi-geo and customer key, two areas that we're helping customers meet data compliance requirements. Multi-geo, of course, is shaped towards data residency. This is not a way to get ExpressRoute, right? Don't pick a data center closer to you because you think it will speed it up. But it's there to help organizations who need to store data in specific data centers.
And that's especially important as we take a look at things like GDPR and things like that. We have customers, I know, in Germany, where if you're an employee in Germany, your data must be held in Germany. It cannot be held elsewhere for the cloud. So that's where multi-geo comes in. Now, there are costs involved with multi-geo, but to meet that level of compliance, it's incredibly important for folks. And go ahead, Christina. Yeah.
So I have a lot of U.S. government customers as well. Will this be implemented into GCC?
That's a great question. It's actually not, because that's the clear separation between multi-geo and sovereign cloud tenants. As sovereign cloud tenants were kind of an early multi-geo capability. But again, the great thing is, again, showing that investment that we've had multi-geo for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and now we've extended it out to Teams.
Great.
Cool. And then customer key.
Yes, customer key is another one. And Stephen, I know you've been close to this, so I'll quickly throw it back over to you. But again, helping customers manage their own keys if they have that requirement through compliance or international requirements, right?
Right. Yeah. Right now, Microsoft holds the encryption key for your data, and you can choose to hold your own key. So you can bring it down. That removes it from us. This is different than bring your own key, but now you hold it, which is great. But the problem is, it means if you lose that key, your data is encrypted forever and you're never going to be able to take a look at it. So it's something you want to do very carefully, and you want to have a well-documented process and something that can be passed on, because the person who downloaded the key may no longer be there. So it's really important you know where that key is at. But it is great for folks who want to make sure that all those loops are closed, and you can do that, but it does limit you. So it's something you really want to think about before you bring together. So Azure Sentinel, that was the other big announcement. So why don't you take a minute and walk us through what that is?
Yeah, just real quickly, if you're not familiar with Sentinel, it is a security information and event management solution, or SIEM as we like to call it. And it's really just there to help you ingest all these logs for insights. And we like to think of it as, helping you fight threats. And so I'm going to quickly go ahead and share out a quick demo I have set up here. FYI, there is a lot involved with setting up Sentinel to start ingesting these logs. So it involves creating a parser and doing some setups, which we will provide a link to help you get here. But once you've set up and created your workspace, we can run some of these specific to teams. So quickly right here, you see my data parser that's going to look at anything calling the Office 365 API for Teams. But then let's get into some team-specific queries that we can run. And I love writing queries back from my SQL days back in high school and such. So I love doing stuff like this and seeing what we can look at. But the first example, we're going to take a look at external users. So what we are able to do is start to look back and see if we've added users from unknown domains. And back to Christina's point about managing guest access, we could run this query to understand if we've added guests that we've never seen before in our federation. Another example we can do here as I switch over to this next one is one of my favorites. We can identify if someone's been added to, a guest user has been added to a team or part of our collaboration space and then has been quickly removed. And where I'm going with that is we've seen this where we quickly add a guest, they go and steal a bunch of data and then they're removed. We know that's unfortunately a threat and entry point. We can look for that, right? And this is a great way, and you can customize all this, build it up to your environment requirements. But again, this is a very baseline example of being able to identify that. And the last one I want to quickly show off here, mass team deletion. This is one of my favorites because, again, this is looking for that team governance that maybe you have an employee that's looking to leave and maybe take some things with them that they don't own. So what this is going to look for is if there's any specific users that has been going through and doing a mass deletion of team. And again, teams. And again, there's a lot of different examples that you could do here. You could take some of these and build off it. There's things that you could integrate with Azure AD to look for risky sign-ins. So again, I think the earth is your playground here when it comes to writing queries and looking at this.
Sure, and we already get messages if you do a mass delete from OneDrive or from SharePoint, the admin gets a message and other folks do. So Christina, as you sit down and you chat with customers, what out of all these different features, what are the ones that are not just game changers, but are things that you've really been waiting for and that the customers are getting excited about?
Shared channels. And I had many of my customers watch the sessions at Ignite. They immediately pinged me and said, Christina, shared channels. We're very excited about this because of, once again, the separation, customers being terrified of their data, terrified of allowing external guest access. So this, to me, is huge. That's going to allow organizations to be able to communicate instead of locking down everything and crippling themselves as much as they have been.
Got it. Yeah. What else? Anything else that has been extremely impactful, I think, as you take a look at whether it's something we talked about here today or not, as we take a look at Teams? Because we also, just to kind of do it, we also talked about Secure Score, Government Insights, which is something that will be coming in preview a little bit later. We did a lot of announcements, and it was great to see so much around security because that's an area that folks have really been asking for, including new features to the adaptive cards, to the Graph API. So how is this impacting the conversations you're having now as opposed to the ones you were having 2 months ago?
Well, another big one is Teams recordings, meetings. The recordings, the biggest complaint is having that in stream. How you couldn't apply governance to it. You couldn't do retention policies.
Right.
So having that moved out has been also a big deal because that's been a huge concern for customers, especially mine that are in the finance industry and different things where they have a lot of regulations they have to follow.
All right. So that pretty much wraps up our show. Great stuff. John, where do folks want to go to learn more about this? Are there certain Ignite sessions that they should check out? Of course, we want you to go to the Tech Community blog, the Microsoft 365 Community blog. What are some of the recommendations?
Absolutely, Stephen. 2 quick resources is we recorded our Microsoft Ignite session on secure and compliant collaboration with Teams. We had some awesome guests, including yourself and another great MVP, Daryl. And the other area I'd say is aka.ms/Teams Security News. That's going to be a conglomeration of all the news that we announced at Ignite, some additional resources, and we'll keep that updated until we get into the fall on anything that comes in between now and then.
Awesome. And then Christina, where should folks go to learn more about you or follow all the stuff that you're doing?
Find me on Twitter, #CWheeler76. You can also ping me on LinkedIn and where else? Yes, you can go to canvas.com too to learn more about, we do consulting for various Microsoft 365 projects. So awesome. You can find me there as well.
Perfect. I appreciate you taking time out, John, as always. Great to get a chance to sit down with you again. I think that you are now tied as our most return guest at 2. So you are in the ranks of Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott, which,
I will say, too, the first one we did, I was actually in a national park, which shows that anywhere boundaryless collaboration we can do, because I did that all on a different device.
Awesome. Well, we'll be back with our next show. We have some more great customers that we're going to be sitting down with and talking about how they implement a team. So we want to thank you, and we will see you again soon on Inside Microsoft Teams.